What we are working on today are the hip flexors, the psoas. So you've joined a 30-minute release session. And with this 30-minute release session, we're going to be working on what is probably one of the most important muscles in the body, and that is part of the hip flexor group. So the psoas has some really important roles in the body. The psoas, or the hip flexors, are responsible for flexion of the hip. So by flexion of the hip, that means anything where you lift through the leg and sit. The other thing to know about the psoas is it is the only muscle of the body, the only muscle that connects the spine to the legs. So that is a huge responsibility. So what we're going to be doing today is release muscles, because we are a society that tends to sit a lot. And when we sit, these muscles become either chronically tight because you're constantly in that flexion, or they can also become quite weak. And this can happen both because of sitting a lot. It also can happen because of the end of the spectrum, because you're actually doing a lot of activity. So weightlifting, a lot of running. So these are really good muscles to stretch out, whether you're feeling like a couch potato or whether you actually went too hard and you're running. So yes, we're going to work through those areas, and I'm going to talk through in the practice other reasons why this muscle is so important and its effects on our nervous system and our stress levels, and the reverse. But what I would love you to have today is either a tennis ball, or if you have like a fit massage ball. If you don't have that, that's okay. What about a rolling pin? So it's creative, it's quirky, but it is another option. So you can use it. We're going to be using it later to kind of massage and roll into the hips. So tennis ball or rolling pin, or if you want to use a foam roller, if you have one of those at home, a bigger area, so it might a little gentler, a little kinder, whereas these are more pointed into the area. The only other thing is a big rolled up or towel like you'd use for yin, or if you have a yoga bolster like I'm going to use here, you can use that. Okay, everybody, so we're going to find ourselves on our mat. I want you to find yourself in a wide knee child's pose. So I'll come with you to the mat. Up in a wide knee child's pose. Toes to touch, knees out wide, and hands forward to lengthen the spine, forehead to the mat. So I want you to sit up in that wide knee child's pose to really breathe into your back. Every inhale you expand, and every exhale you feel the ribs contract. Breathe in, back expands. Exhale, ribs contract. So I'm going to keep that the breath count coming with you. So the count today will be very simple. In for 4, out for 4. So exhaling the air through the nose. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, out, in, out. So just keep that breath moving in through the nose and out through the nose. And if it feels good to massage your forehead into the floor a little bit, you might even just roll the head from side to side to massage the forehead into the mat, to loosen off the neck. How's your breath? So your hip is currently in a gentle flexion. Just observing for you with that gentle squeeze or flexion of the hips, do you feel tight in the front of the hips? The answer might be yes for some of you. The answer might be no for others. I just want you to observe. Well done. I want you to take your time here to come up to a bit more of a hands and knees position. So a tabletop, your wrists underneath your shoulders, your knees underneath your hips. And just working into a little bit of that cat-cow, so opening forward on the inhale, and on the exhale, the tailbone tips, you ripple through the spine and round the back. And keep that going, belly drops, look forward, inhale, and on the exhale, round. Just really awakening your back and really rounding away from the floor as much as possible into the back. And then come back to neutral. And from here, we are going to use our rolling prop. So, I think what I will use is I'm going to be creative and I'm going to use the rolling pin. So, feel free for it to be a ball. Now, you could just do it if you want to do it gently. You could just roll that ball, sit back on your heels, or sit however is most comfortable, even back on. Roll up and down or around in circles with that ball or with that rolling pin. So you could just roll up and down and work there. Your other option, and especially if you've got a foam roller, this will definitely be your option, is to come down over the prop. And you can see I've bent my left knee out to the side. I've got my rolling pin or my ball or my roller, and I'm just gently going to rock forward and back. And I'm going to start mashing into that muscle. So now muscles. Psoas is the biggest, but it is also the deepest. Probably for most of you, what you'll be accessing here are others in the hip flexor group. The psoas is quite deep. It's actually your deepest core muscle you have because it is a stabilizing core muscle, as well as being a muscle that connects from your spine to your femur, to your thigh bone. So as I said earlier, the only muscle that connects from your spine to your legs. So we might be accessing the surface, or we might be able to access into that psoas. The juicy part is if you guys can find a spot and hold, and relax your buttocks a little bit and let your body work into that rolling pin or that rolling prop. Relax the jaw. Deep breaths. So I want to just take a couple more breaths here. If you prefer to start rolling up again, you can. And by all means, if you're like, I'd like to go down quads, of course, you might roll the front of the quads. You might roll the outsides of the quads as I'm doing here, getting on the side. That might be a little bit crueler if you've got the tennis ball, guys. If you've got the rolling pin or the foam roller, it might be a little more manageable. So waking up and merging into the psoas and potentially the hip flexors and the quad. Beautiful. Alrighty, here I want you to press back up. Take a moment to either sit back on your heels or just even come up to a kneel. I just want you to observe sensation and difference between one side and the other. Beautiful. Second side. So from here, prop underneath the left hip, maybe wing that right knee out to the side and rolling. So on this second side, my goal is basically I'm trying to distract you with information so that you don't become too overwhelmed if this is painful, because for some of you, yes, this muscle will be quite intense to roll. If it's an electric pain, please step back, take it back. If you're finding it's just really strong, nagging discomfort, it's useful, probably useful. So the other thing that's very important to know about psoas, and why it has a reputation of being very, very important, not only amongst physiotherapists and other body therapists, but also people who are dealing with emotional stress, mental stress, is because where the psoas, the origin of the psoas is up in the thoracic and lumbar spine. So it spans a few different vertebrae. And so what the connection point of that area in the spine is to the brain, the reptilian brain. So reptilian brain manages fight or flight. And so of course, if you would have a tiger running toward you, the tiger's coming, the message goes into the brain, flight, run. The message travels down the psoas, and of course, it's the only muscle in your body that can lift your legs. So the psoas contracts. All right, well done, come up. I just want you to observe each side. So you see, we don't have many tigers running toward us. But with the world as it is right now, unfortunately, we are receiving stress messages or signals to the brain. And what's happening in our bodies potentially is that those stress messages come in, they travel down the spine, and the message to the psoas or the hip flex is tighten. And then if on top of that you're working in seat, or you're also sitting and chilling with some Netflix at night, you're going to find that these muscles are pretty tight. And I don't know about you guys, but the only exercise I'm doing otherwise, other than yoga, is I'm walking a lot, and that is also going to tighten them up a little bit if you're walking more than you used to. Okay, hello hip flexors. So we're now going to go a little more toward a yoga direction. So from your hands and knees, we're going to take ourselves into downward facing dog. And I want you from here to just pedal out the feet a little bit, bending one knee, and then bending the other. Very good. And then I want you to come back more to a neutral position. And I want you to lift your right leg. Now from here, sometimes with a three-legged dog, we bend the knee first, then peel open the hip. What I would like you to do today, because it will get deeper into your hip flexors, is peel open the hip first, and then bend the knee and pull that heel toward your buttock. So what should happen then is some of you will get that pull much deeper into the hip flexors. And please no, don't flip the dog like me. Good, take an inhale. Very good. Now knee to your nose, shoulder shift over your wrist. That's a bit of psoas strengthening, and step the foot through. And you might need to shuffle that foot through, no problems. So keep that back knee down, hands rest on your thighs for now. So this is one of the key ways that we can access the psoas in yoga. But what I want, if possible, is to, instead of going as deep as we can, arching that low back, is to actually pull up more through the muscle. So you're going to come more to a box lunge shape. Lower back lengthens, front of the hip pulls up. So the sensation at the back is down and the sensation at the front is up. And what you should hopefully feel is more pulling into that left hip flexor. So you might push the hands down into the leg, open up through the chest, deep breaths. If you wish to add a little bit more on through the chest, hands behind your back, shoulders roll back and down, heart up, and neck gently lengthens as you look up. 2 more breaths. Beautiful. Back to neutral, hands to the floor, half split. So you shift your bottom back over your knees, so your left hip stacks over your left knee, toes flex toward you, and folding over that leg. Relax your jaw. Relax the muscles of the face. So we're going to be heading shortly into a deeper stretch through the psoas. So I want you to slowly walk your hands forward, wiggle that right foot off to the side. If for any reason with all this kneeling your left knee isn't so happy, especially if you have a hardwood floor at home or even concrete floor, you might want to pad your knee with a little towel or a jumper or something just to be kind to that knee. So unlike before where we were doing a very upward pull lunge to get into the hip flexors, now we're working more into a deeper stretch, a deeper sink. So relaxing the jaw, relaxing the neck. You have a choice to stay here on this forward plane. It is sufficient. Or if you want to get into your quadriceps a little more, you bend that left knee and sweep the right hand back. Now, as it's a half-hour session, we haven't done a lot of warming up of that quad, etc. So if you find that's too strong, just ditch it. Both hands on the floor, it is enough. You can, of course, if you have a strap or a tie of your robe, you could loop that around if you can't quite reach, or you can even just keep your hand on your low back and add a twist if you prefer. 2 more breaths. Well done. Both hands on the floor. You will probably need to shift the weight back a little bit. Plant your wrists under your shoulders, kneeling 3-legged dog. So you extend that right leg back, peel open the hip, and then bend the knee. Now either choosing to just hold that expression or left foot moves off your mat, kneeling flip dog, right foot touches the floor, you open up for that back bend. Deep breaths. Now hopefully this expression here pulls through the front body, through the hip flexors, through the psoas, gives you some length for 3, 2, and sweep it back. Hand to the floor, knee to the floor, and just maybe a little bit of cat-cow. It's not a flow practice necessarily. Of course, if you wish to add vinyasas here, if you're after something more energizing, you can feel free. But in the release, we're keeping it a little bit simpler and a little bit less flowy. Well done. Downward facing dog is where you head next. Relax the head and neck. Maybe a gentle shake out, left and right for no. Nod the head for yes. Now inhale, left leg lifts. Remember, you're not bending the knee first today. You're peeling open the hip, stack the left hip on top of the right, and then bend the knee and pull the heel to the buttock, and that should get deeper into your psoas. Relax the neck. Deep breaths for 3, for 2. Very good. Knee to the nose, kneeling lunge. So even if you step it through, you need to drop that knee and wiggle the left foot through. Now, I've probably made my lunge too deep. Oops, I've got to slide it back in. Remembering we're working with a box lunge shape here first. So I want you to push that left foot down into the floor. Lower back goes down, front pelvis pulls up. So it's a opposite movement, down, up. So you might place your hands on your back, you might keep it on the leg, just relax the shoulders and breathe. So the idea is here we're getting some pull or length through that right hip. Option from here, clasp the hands, roll the shoulders back and sternum up. You might add a little bit of expression of a back bend. Now, how's your breathing? It's so easy to hold the breath in this posture. For 3, for 2, well done. Release, hands to the floor, and from here, half split. Straightening up that left leg. You might need to wiggle the heel forward, so you're stacking your right knee under your right hip, and just folding over that left leg. And just relax the muscles of the face. So the same is true in the reverse. So when we talk about the mind sending stress signals to the hip flexors, and that stress can tighten your hip flexors as well as all the functional movement, the walking, the sitting that you're doing, the reverse is true. So we can hopefully lengthen out and relax the hip flexors, and it sends messages to the brain that we can relax. That's the goal. So from here, the deeper variation, lizard pose, you need to wiggle your left foot outside your left hand, back knee stays down, relax the shoulders. You can even rest your forearms on a bolster or block or your rolled up blanket if you prefer. Some of us are sticking on this forward plane, and some of us are adding a twist, maybe twisting to the left or even bending into that right knee and taking hold of the foot. And it's up to you if you're pulling that heel in towards your buttock or if you're kicking it back. Probably by pulling it in, you'll get a little bit deeper into the quad. Well done. Both hands to the floor. You might need to shift the weight back to get wrists under your shoulders. Peel that left knee open. Kneeling three-legged dog. Kneeling flip is optional. The right foot moves off the mat, left foot to the floor and opening up through the chest. And you work this bit of a back bend. The hips push up and forward so you get that space through the front of the hips for 3, for 2. Well done. Sweep it back. A little bit of cat-cow to loosen off the back. Very good. When you're ready, downward facing dog. Relax the neck. Pigeon pose is next. Right leg lifts, right knee through to the right wrist, the shin settles down and lengthening that left leg back. So you want to, from here, roll the shoulders back, and if possible, can you come up high and open up through the chest? And the idea is here that when you're upright in your pigeon, yes, hopefully you're still getting a bit of love in that right glute where we usually focus the energy, but the idea here is to get that space in the front of the left hip as well. So by rolling the shoulders back and working here, you get that space. And of course, if some of you are feeling energetic, you can work to mermaid and take hold of the foot, etc. But I'm not going to guide you there necessarily, because the key interest is just staying upright enough to get that space. I just want you to take 2 more breaths. When you're ready, the forward fold. So now we work into stretching that right hip or glute area, relaxing the jaw, the muscles of the face. Just 2 more breaths. Well done. Take your time. Downward facing dog. Tuck the toes. Stretch it back. Of course, if you're feeling really curious for flip dog or anything like that, you can add it in. Otherwise, downward facing dog. Pigeon pose, left side. Left leg lifts. And left knee toward left wrist. Settle that shin down and lengthen up. Now, I don't ever want you to feel like you should have that shin parallel to the top of the mat. Some people's pelvises anatomically are built in a way that is very comfortable to bring that shin on that angle rather than this angle. For most of us, the pelvis is built in such a way that to have the shin on the angle is going to be far safer for the hips, for the knees, and we're going to be getting plenty of stretch. So just in case you've ever wondered if your shin should be parallel to the top of the mat, you can try, but if the tendency is once you get that shin to the top to roll out, that's not what we're after. We want to keep everything square to the front, lengthen through the hip, and as you can see, my front shin is on quite the angle to do that. And I'm getting plenty of love through my right hip. I'm getting plenty of love through my left glute. 1 more inhale here. And when you're ready, take it forward. So really taking time here to relax the muscles in the face. Can you relax the buttocks, just in case that right buttock is clenching or squeezing? And then when you are ready, we take our time, walk the hands back in, tuck the right toes, kick the left leg up and back, and maybe Peel open the hip, bend the knee. I know some of you flipped, but whatever tickles your fancy. And then foot to the floor, knees to the floor. So before we come down for some passive, one last bit of more yin style work, I just want to do one more pose where it actually is more about the hip flexors than you think, and that's camel. So camel posture, which is kind of more traditionally thought of as a back bend, is actually an opportunity to really get some space through the psoas. So coming up on your knees, the hands rest into the low back. And again, just like when we did in that lunge, lower back, taking the arch out of it, going downward through the back and upward through the front. The same is true in camel. So I want you to lengthen that low back, take the curve out and pull up through the front. Now press the pelvis forward. So there's a little bit of core activation to keep you strong and stable here. That lengthen the low back, pull up through the front and opening up through the chest. And of course, if you wish to take it deeper into back bend, you can, but I'm just going to keep it at that today. Pelvis forward, downward pull through the back, upward pull through the front to get into those hip flexors for 3, for 2. Very good. Back to neutral. And sit back on your heels. And just taking a moment as you sit back on the heels to relax the shoulders. Breathing in. Let it go through the mouth. Inhale through the nose. Let go through the mouth. Once more in. Release. So we're going to come down onto our backs now, and we're going to use our big rolled up blanket or our bolster. So we're going to work toward bridge and pontoon pose for those of you who are familiar with yin. So sweeping your legs around, laying upon your back, and I want you to push the soles of your feet into the floor with the knees quite bent and placing that bolster or that rolled up blanket underneath your buttocks and your low back. And from here, you might keep the knees bent. And for some of us, that might be enough to just get that gentle space through the psoas. Otherwise, you can lengthen the legs out in pontoon. What I want you to be really aware of though, is if you get any back pain with that position, come back to bent knees. Even if you're getting back pain, sometimes that can be that your prop is too high and it needs to go a little lower. But the idea is that we've got enough height to get some space through the front of the hips. So allow your shoulders to relax, the palms to turn up. Deep breaths. Just observing as well if the buttocks are squeezing. Can they relax a little bit? So this might be sufficient, and you might choose to just stick with this shape and not add anything else. Your other option is that you bend your right knee in toward your chest, and that might be enough. Or you gently wrap the hands around the shin or around the thigh and gently pull that leg in toward you to enhance the stretch in the front of your left hip. Relax the jaw, relax the muscles of the face. Two more full deep breaths. And it sounds a little odd, but can you direct them down into the front of your left hip? So big inhale, breathe into that left hip flexor or flexors. Exhale, let them go. One more, inhale. Exhale. And then just lengthen that right leg out. And just observe sensation in your hips, in your back, and let the feet flop. No holding of the foot in particular position. and switch. Left leg in, hugging that knee in, getting that extension through the front of the right hip. Deep breaths. Relaxing the jaw, relaxing the muscles around the eyes. And then when you are ready, one more full deep breath. Let it go. And release. Leg long for a moment. Just observing sensation. And then rebend your knees. Press the feet into the floor. Slide that bolster or blanket out. And reconnect your back with the floor, and maybe the spine remains at neutral with the knees bent. Before we take a little bit of a rest or a shavasana, you might choose to just sway the knees from side to side. You might even choose bringing the knees in for a slightly stronger twist, dropping the legs to one side. And then when you're ready, legs to the other side. And then when you're ready, shavasana. The legs stretch out, the hands by the side. Relax the shoulders. Can you take a big breath in through your nose? Sigh out. One more in. Sigh out. Once more. Sigh out. With this express session, I'm going to leave you in your shavasana, and you can feel free to stay as little or as long as you like. Hopefully after this session, you'll feel a little bit more open through the front of the hips and the chest. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.